What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, y'all? This is your brother Chief Flying Eagle, aka Lord of Matakan, aka the Black Identity Slayer. What the deal is, what the deal is, what the deal is. Welcome to the bill. Welcome to the bill. I'm about to go in right now. Let me just make sure I got some audio on here. Give me a second. Give me 1 second. All right. Well, hold up. Wait a minute. Let me see something. All right, here we go. All right, cool, cool, cool. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? I'm about to drop some information as usual. Everything, all of this is for educational purposes. You know what I'm saying? Knowledge-based purposes. Just putting things in perspective because uh a lot of times, we hear about the Emancipation Proclamation. We hear about the 14th Amendment. We hear about the 13th Amendment. But a lot of times, I don't think people really know what it means. You feel me? I'm even going to touch a little bit on birthright citizenship. But the point is, I'm going to break this down and explain everything in layman terms as much as I can. All right. So I'm not going to wait for a whole lot of people to come on here. For those of you that's actually tuned in right now, do me a favor, drop a little something in the chat. You dig? And we're gonna make some moves. But definitely want to broaden your perspective in terms of all these different amendments and what they mean and how does it apply. And really, I mean, bottom line, what the hell it means. All right. So boom, let me go ahead and share my screen. Share my screen, and we're gonna read. Reading is fun for the mental. Here we go. Here we go. Let me go to my window. While I'm doing this, let me say I would like to give thanks to our righteous ancestors. And in fact, you know what? Give thanks to all our ancestors. I acknowledge all of them, but definitely ask the righteous ones to continue to guide me and protect me, you know what I'm saying, in everything that I do. So, with that being said, let's get into this. Here we go. All right, here we go. So, like I said, we're going to talk about, you know, uh, the Lincoln emergency war powers, and then you'll see exactly what Trump is doing because a lot of times people really think what Trump is doing is about illegal aliens. No, man, all this is about expansion. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not sure if you know what if a lot of you know what imperialism means or an imperialistic system. All right. Before we get out of here, we're gonna look at the etymology of that. All right, imperialism, and then within your own mind, you tell me if this really have anything to do with illegal aliens. It ain't got nothing to do with that. You did. This is just more a form of, another form of colonization that's being played out right in front of our eyes right now. You did. And because a lot of people don't know historically what certain things mean, or they never heard of it, you feel me? They don't get it. And the truth of the matter is, even I break all of this down, guess what? Some people are still not going to get it. So it's okay. It's only for those that are willing and ready to get the message. All right. So the extended lesson, and I put this together a couple of days ago and I finished it up today. So just want to make sure we get to the bottom and the foundation of some of the things that people that look like us, you feel me, are experiencing from this system. All right. So, extended lesson Lincoln's emergency war powers, emancipation, the 13th Amendment. Like I said, we're going to go over the 14th Amendment as well, but we're definitely going to start with this: a structural, layman friendly teaching guide, Civil War era modern prison labor. So, we're going to focus on that. And the way I'm going to break this down, like I said, I'm going to break it down in layman terms. All right. So, you truly get it. So I'm going to make an attempt to break this down in simple English as possible. All right. So here's the purpose of the lesson I prepared for you today. This lesson explains how emergency wartime actions taken by Abraham Lincoln during the early Civil War period changed the balance of power in the government. How the Emancipation Proclamation is commonly misunderstood because it is. You feel me? Because most people, they'll tell you, and that's That's being taught in school as well, that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but that's not true. All right, that's not true. So, like I said, we're going to put all of that in perspective. All right, so let's read that again. Uh, the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation, is commonly misunderstood, and how the 13th Amendment ended chattel slavery while keeping a constitutional exception that allows slavery and involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime after conviction. The lesson then traces how this exception was used after the civil rights, pardon me, the Civil War through black codes and convict listen, and how related systems of prison labor exist in modern form today. All right, so I'm going to take you straight from the 13th Amendment straight into the prison pipeline. Basically, that's what it is. Okay. Number two, learning objectives. I'm going to explain what emergency war powers are and why Lincoln used them in 1861 before Congress reconvened. Next, I'm going to describe Lincoln's call for 75,000 militia troops and what impact the mobilization had. Th- Thirdly, I'm going to explain what the Emancipation Proclamation did and what it did not do. Fourth, I'm going to explain the 13th Amendment's key language, especially the crime exception. Five, I'm going to define black codes, convict listen, penal servitude, and why some scholars call it neo-slavery. I'm going to break down to you what neo-slavery means as well. Next, I'm going to describe how modern prison labor works and how it connects back to the constitutional exception, which is the 13th Amendment. Number three, key terms, plain definitions, emergency war powers, extraordinary actions a president may take during rebellion or invasion to respond quickly, sometimes before the legislature can act. All right, let's read that again. Emergency war powers, extraordinary actions a president may take during a rebellion or invasion to respond quickly, sometimes before the legislature can act. Now, you may say, well, Chief, well, hold up. Are you telling me there's a rebellion going on, invasion going on? That's why Trump have all these, these armed forces in the street. Well, not quite. But you see, the thing is, a lot of our people are actually waking up because the original indigenous people are waking up, right? So they have to start preparing themselves to put things in place. But it's being disguised as something else. Like I've told y'all before, and I'll continue to tell you, these people are always 50 moves ahead. Always 50 moves ahead. Keep that in mind. Okay? Militia slash call up. A rapid mobilization of troops, often state-based forces called into service. Isn't isn't that what's happening with ICE? Same thing, right? But like I said, it's these guys under the pretense of illegal alien. Like I told y'all before, I'm gonna say it again. Donald Trump is not the boss. Donald Trump is only the CEO. He's only the CEO of the executive branch. You feel me? A government has three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. What are their roles? Here we go. The legislative branch, they make the rules, so to speak, what they call laws, right? All right, so they pass those laws. They don't make them per se, but they pass them. All right, because you have Congress. They do it in the form of a bill, and they have to go to Congress and do what they do. And then once they agree, then the legislative branch makes sure it's passed. Next, we have it goes to the executive branch. What is the role of the executive branch? Exactly what it says: to execute. So whatever is handed down from the legislative branch, okay, the president, the CEO, his job is to execute that. and then the judicial branch deals with the courts. Their role is strictly to make sure that there are checks and balances. Their job is not necessarily to change things, it's just to give the true interpretation of that law or statute when it was created. All right? Hold on for a second. Let me just turn off my notification so that this thing don't keep going off. All right? Hold on for a second. I apologize for that because if I don't, it's just gonna keep going off. Give me a second. I think I did that already, but let me check and see. So I hope you guys are getting this so far. All right. Now, Emancipation Proclamation. What is that? A wartime order effective January 1st, 1863, declaring freedom for enslaved people in areas in rebellion. So therefore, Abraham Lincoln did not free slaves on a whole. All right. Once again, he only declared freedom for enslaved people in rebellious areas only. Keep that in mind. All right. Limited scope, but huge impact. All right. Because it set the precedence for a lot of things that happen in the United States. The 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment, constitutional amendment that abolished slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime after conviction. Pardon me, conviction, yeah. Black codes. Black codes, state level laws. Let's read that again. I want y'all to pay attention to that. State level laws. So the black codes were made laws. Okay? So therefore, state level laws after the Civil War designed to control newly freed people and restrict their freedom, often criminalizing every behavior, my people. Pay attention to what I'm saying. The black codes still exist because our people out here calling themselves black. So these codes, they were never abolished. They were never repealed. That's why they have to criminalize everything to make sure that you are a victim of those. Well, not necessarily a victim of the crime, but an associate of the crime, so to speak. You're the ones doing the so-called crimes for the most part. Even if other ethnic groups, they do it, but they don't get the harsh punishment that black people get because they call themselves black. And I'm saying black people get because they call themselves black. I'm not black. Okay? So these codes don't apply to me. They only apply to black people. People who consider themselves descendants of slaves. Okay? Let us read. Reading is fun for the mental. Convict leasing, a system where states leased incarcerated people to private businesses, work often brutal and exploitative. Pay attention to what I'm saying here now. The 13th Amendment explicitly said that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. But you see, there was a provision, and I'm going to expound on that a little more. And that is why you have things like convict leasing that is still in play, where a system or a state, right, they lease their incarcerated prison mass or the people in prison, right, to private businesses. So when you go to jail, yeah, they could lease you to private businesses. And guess what? That is lawful. And often under brutal and exploitative conditions. And you can't do a damn thing about it. Because at that time, slavery is legal and involuntary servitude is legal. I'm going to explain that some more. Okay? The penal servitude. What is that? It's forced labor as part of punishment in the criminal legal system. Penal servitude. Forced labor as part of punishment in the criminal legal system. Neo-slavery. What is that? It's a scholarly term. That's what scholars use, right? And it's a label some scholars use to describe the system that recreated slavery, like labor conditions through criminalization and forced labor. So that is neo slavery, bringing back slavery because you have a criminal record and that's your punishment. So therefore, they're able to enslave you. All right, let us proceed. Part five, Lincoln's emergency war powers of 1861. So I'm going to break this down. Why is this thing keep moving like that? A, the situation Lincoln faced in layman terms. In other words, I'm going to break that down so a baby could get it. Hopefully, everybody gets it. All right. In early 1861, the country entered a national emergency. Every president has the ability to execute, all right, an executive order and pass what's called a national emergency. They have that power to do that. All right. Several southern states, we're talking about the southern states now, right? Several southern states had declared secession and armed conflict began. Congress was not in session at the moment the crisis escalated. Lincoln believed he had to act immediately to preserve the Union and respond to rebellion even before Congress could debate or vote. So, in other words, he made an executive decision. Do you? I wonder if it's a coincidence that all of this took place while Congress wasn't around. I wonder, but I'm not going to speculate on that. I'm just asking a question. You know what I mean? Because I just find it to be a strange coincidence. You dig? So he could do what he got to do. But once again, I'm not going to speculate on that. It's just an observation. Okay. Next, B, the 75,000 troop call up. What happened on April 15th, 1861? Lincoln called for 75,000 militia troops. In plain terms, he ordered a rapid mobilization of armed forces to respond to the rebellion and protect federal authority. You may ask yourself, well, Chief, what that got to do with today? Well, once again, as you could see what's going on in individual states, and it's just a matter of time before the CEO of the corporation, he wants to extend the reach into different states. You feel me? Because they know the tides are changing. They know that the vibration and the frequency is changing, and they have to literally lessen, you feel me, the population in a sense. All right. Once again, I'm saying in a sense, you feel me? So that there will be less resistance. All that is part of the game. All that is part of the plan. It's a long-term plan. These people just don't do things spontaneously like that. No, everything they do is well calculated. Everything they do, it's a plan, and they're putting the plan into motion. They are always 50 moves ahead. When I say 50 moves ahead, I'm talking about the people who own the corporation. Okay? The people that you actually see, they are the ones working, but you can't see the hands, all right, behind the corporation of the people that's actually calling the shots. So basically, everybody got a job, and their job is to do what the owners of the corporation not ask them to do, but tell them to do. There's a difference. Okay? So everything about Congress, and we have to wait for Congress to do this, and you have to vote for either left or right, man. Listen, all that stuff is an illusion. They got you thinking your vote is the one is what's changing things or affecting things. Nah, nope, it's an illusion. All the decisions are already made. Even right now, they already know who the next CEO of the corporation is. That's already in place, and that's facts over feelings. Okay. C, why this mattered, the impact on mobilization. It escalated the conflict from political crisis into a full scale war footing. It forced government institutions to respond quickly. Decisions were made in emergency mode. Anytime there is an emergency mode, the president called that emergency, decisions can and will be made on the at the spur of the moment. All right. So once again, he don't have to go back to Congress. He ain't got to do none of that because it's a state of emergency. All right. It increased executive power in the short term because the president acted before Congress reconvened. So therefore, like I said before, he didn't need the permission of Congress to do anything. Basically, it's like, okay, it's what I say goes. All right. And don't you realize that's exactly what the current CEO is doing? It's what I say go. Even if he have to go to the court once in a while, but he still have to try to persuade the court to go into his, work on his behalf. But then he'd still do things on his own cognizant. Guess what? There is nothing new under the sun. So it increased executive power in the short term because the president acted before Congress reconvened. It created a pattern that act first during the crisis, then seek legislation approval afterwards. All right. So in other words, I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to act during this crisis, and then the legislative body, all right, they will approve afterwards. All right. So that's what happened in 1861. D, key emergency actions Lincoln took. All right. Calling up troops, the militia, and increasing military readiness. Ordering naval measures such as the blockade of southern ports. Didn't Trump start working on the tariffs? Huh? Literally, it's just the same thing. It's literally the same thing on a different scale. Same playbook. You feel me? Same playbook. Authorizing certain spending and military expansion before formal appropriations were passed. Is the same thing. They cut funding for all these different institutions, all these different organizations, taking away funding because my people is the same situation. They're just getting ready for what's the big picture, the big fallout. Literally, that's what they're waiting on. But this time it's going to be huge. You dig? It's going to be huge. So pay attention. Pay attention now. Authorizing limited, hold on for a second. Authorizing limited suspensions of habeas corpus in the specific areas, one of the most controversial actions. Isn't just recently, right? Didn't Trump, propose suspending habeas corpus? My people, man, wake up and open up your eyes, man. Literally everything I've told y'all in the past, it has happened. What do you think is happening now? I'm showing you literally the pattern of what was happening or what happened in the past and what it led to. And we're seeing the same situation, the same steps, the same play. It's about to go down soon enough. Let us rock. E, how it affected the two houses, the Senate and the House. Lincoln later convened Congress in special session on July 4th, 1861. At the point, both houses had to deal with the action already taken. In simple terms, Congress could approve, modify, or reject what had been done. In practice, Congress largely approved funding and measures necessary to continue the war. You did. So, as you could see, Trump is, threatening all these different states to defund them. You see what I'm saying? Because he knows that he has certain demands that he need, but of course it has to come off to the public as something else. You see, the whole so-called illegal immigrant fiasco is just a smoking screen preparing for a war. You see what I'm saying? But like I said, man, it's only when it happens people are going to, reflect and be like, damn, Chief told us about that, man. The same way I told people about the Jubilee in 2017. 2017 Jubilee came and gone. Told my people about the one in 2025, came and gone. It ended on January 6th. At some point, y'all got to say, man, this man, probably he knows what he's talking about. I'm just saying. Let us rock. Okay? So now the defunding phase is happening as we speak. Go look it up yourself. Go look it up yourself. And do the research. Whatever I'm telling you, don't believe anything. Go look it up yourself. Okay? All right, cool. So what happened, with both houses, right? The transformation of powers. Lincoln preserved the Union as a single nation. Remember, they're all those individual states. Those were autonomous states. Those states had their own sovereignty. You feel me? So don't think everything that was happening Lincoln did. It was no, that wall was put in place, people. It was put in place by the people of the corporation because they did not want the individual states to have their sovereignty. Well, let me put it this way, allegedly, wink, wink. You feel me? Allegedly. They did not want the states to have their own independence. That was the whole goal, to bring it literally, to bring everything underneath one umbrella. And guess what? They were successful. So Lincoln preserved the Union as a single nation, but transformed it from a loose federation of sovereign states into what? A central constitutional nation state with expanded federal authority over states and individuals. Because guess what? At that point, people were still sovereign. So that was a hijack. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Venezuela being hijacked, talking about Cuba, talking about what is that? What land is that? Is it Netherlands or Finland? One of them something land. You feel me? My people, open up your eyes, man. Open up your eyes. Colonization was based on the premise of discovering to make new and then replace. Colonization, discover, make new, and replace, or replace and make new. Either way, I'm saying it's interchangeable. So we are literally going through the same thing right now. And that's why I'm going to show you the etymology of imperialism when I'm done. Okay? So therefore, Lincoln preserved the Union as a single nation because it wasn't a single nation. You did. But the transformation from that move he made via the Emergency Act, right? When he put the armed forces out in the public, you feel me? It transformed it from a loose federation of sovereign states. Remember, those states had their own sovereignty, into a centralized constitutional nation state. Nation state, get it? A corporation. You feel me? Those states were de jure before that transformation. They were de jure states. And they brought them under one umbrella, a nation state as a collective, and made them de facto. Took away the sovereignty of those states, hence took away the sovereignty of these individuals within the confines of those states, or the confinement of those states. All right. So, with expanded federal authority over states and individuals. What the Union was before the Civil War. Let's break that down. Before 1861, the Union was widely understood as a federal compact of states. States seen as what? Primary political units. They were individualized. All right. The federal government has limited and enumerated. So what that meant was the states gave the federal government, yes, they gave them some power, but it was limited. Enumerated basically means we're going to give you a list of things that you could do. So their powers were limited and enumerated. You feel me? So they didn't have control, total control over this individual states. I hope you're following so far. Citizenship and rights largely are mediated through state status. So you were a state citizen and not a federal citizen. Get it? Secession debated as theoretical, even if disputed. This is why people spoke of the United States in the plural. These United States are what the Union became after the Civil War. After Lincoln's actions, the war, and the Reconstruction, the Union became a perpetual, indissoluble nation. In other words, into perpetuity, the corporation stands. It cannot be dissolved. That's what they're saying. Into perpetuity. So therefore, they want you to be a corporate subject of the corporation for the rest of your life, for the rest of your children's lives, for the rest of their children's lives. Perpetual servitude. Okay? Once again, allegedly. Secession was no longer considered legally possible. The Union was treated as an older than the states. So check this out. Even if the states, they had the foundation, it was older than the Union, based on what took place. They made it look as if that the Union was older than the states themselves by just considering that. So they just made the decision, well, guess what? The Union is older than all the individual states because we said so. Literally sold out the sovereignty of those individual states to corporate interest. Okay? Allegedly. The Supreme Court later affirmed this in Texas versus White, 1869. You could go look up the court case, break it down, read it yourself. Do your own due diligence. Don't believe anything that I say. All right? I'm giving you a brief history of what took place since 1861 underneath the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. So I hope that will put some things, make some things a little more clear in your mind. All right? A centralized federal authority. That was the result of all of that. That's what it was for. Okay? A centralized federal authority. Federal power expanded dramatically in areas once dominated by states. You feel me? Took away their sovereignty, like I said. Military authority, taxation, currency, civil rights enforcement, emergency governance. The federal government was no longer just a referee, because that's what they were, right? With limited powers and a list of things that they could do. It became a dominant sovereign authority over those states. A direct relationship between the federal government and the individual, okay? In other words, the individuals, the citizens of the state, They had to deal with the state directly, and the federal government could not really do anything. But once that transformation took place, the federal government didn't have to ask those states for any permission to get to their citizens. All right? This is a major shift. Before, the federal government mostly dealt with states. They had to go through the states first. Individuals were governed primarily through their own respective states and their system. But after the transformation, the federal government asserted direct authority over individuals. This was reinforced through national citizenship concepts. National citizenship concepts. So if the corporation took over and now you are no longer a citizen of your state, which you were not a corporation then, okay, you were considered one of we the people of the state. But when they gave up their sovereignty to the corporation that stepped in, they themselves became corporations, and by default, their citizens became corporations as well. So therefore, the federal government, okay, has every single right to control every facet of your life because you are now their property, allegedly. Okay? And I know why I'm saying that. You did. All right, cool. So once again, this was reinforced through national citizenship concepts, federal enforcement powers. Basically, you didn't have a damn choice. Constitutional amendments. They amended the constitutions to fit the criteria of the corporation. So what are they telling you? They literally changed the constitution. They changed the de jure constitution. They changed it to a de facto constitution. Okay? All right, cool. This is where the union fundamentally changed character. So we went from a de jure government system, you feel me, to a de facto system. So it changed its character. The characteristics of that government, it was changed, it was altered. The post-war amendments transformed the Constitution into an instrument that, see what it turned it into? An instrument that actively regulates state behavior. So instead of the state controlling the federal government, now the federal government is controlling the state. All right? Authorizes federal intervention inside states. Allow federal courts to oversee state laws when the state laws had supremacy. You did. Allow federal courts to oversee state laws. This is the birth of the modern rights enforcement state. A permanent emergency precedent. You hear that? A permanent. So my people, since 1861, there has always been a permanent emergency precedent. They just wasn't telling you about it. That's why Trump could do what the hell he's doing. You feel me? That's why I tell people, man, y'all got to know how to break down these things, man. You did. And that's why I keep telling people the way I break it down, man, I'm just saying, and I'm going to leave it as that. Now you're able to see what's happening because we have always been in a state of emergency. That's what permanent means. Permanent does not mean temporarily. It doesn't mean for a little while, a short time, or sometimes. No, it means permanently. And of course, if they decide, it ends. But the bottom line is that is still in play. The Emergency Act, it has been made permanent since 1861. So literally, we have always been under a military state since 1861. Because the people who own the corporation, they have to make sure that they have their boys to do what they want them to do. And that's what ICE is. Y'all get it now? Y'all get it now? Allegedly. Okay? They're federal agents, not state agents. All right, cool. Let's proceed. Lincoln wartime actions set enduring precedents. Executive action first, approval later. In other words, we're going to create a scenario. All right. We're going to tell you there's something brewing, a war is about to start. So, boom, the Emergency Act kicks in, executive order kicks in. So, allegedly, I'm going to create the problem. I'm going to give you the solution. That's what they do. But like I said before, the President Lincoln was only doing what he was told. That's all. He was only doing what he was told. The moment he didn't want to do what he was told, when he realized he was being used, guess what happened to him? Ah, man, my people perish for the lack of knowledge, man. Osio, Osio, Osio. Welcome to the build. Welcome to the build, my brothers and sisters. Like I said, man, I'm always here coming to bring the truth, man. You feel me? That's all I do. All right, so I haven't responded to you because I'm actually reading the document, but I'll come back into the comments soon enough. You did? All right, cool. Let me get back to it. All right, let's go. Boom. So therefore, the broad interpretation of necessity expanded commander-in-chief authority, because he didn't have the authority when those states had their autonomy, when those states had their sovereignty. You feel me? So the people who wanted to invest, you feel me, to own everything, they're like, nah, man, we can't do that. So what we're gonna have to do, we're gonna have to make sure we change the Constitution. We're gonna have to, and the only way to do that, we have to change the Constitution. In other words, we have to amend, ratify the Constitution to make it fit what we wanted to do. Okay? It has to fit what we wanted to do. So once that was accomplished, you did. Now we are able to get our CEO to do what we want them to do. Because if we have to go to 50 different individuals, there might be just too much conflict, because 5 states might say, nah, I ain't trying to rock with you. 3 of them might be, yeah, I'm ready to roll. Another 2 might be indecisive. You feel me? So I'm just saying, they have to make sure that one individual had the executive control over all the other CEOs, so to speak, governors. All right, cool. Like I said, I'm breaking this down in layman terms. So in simple terms, layman terms, before the Civil War, the states created a federal government. After the Civil War, the federal government defines the state's limits. So you see the trick? The states were the ones who created the federal government. But the purpose of doing that, like I said, they always 50 moves ahead. The purpose was doing that. We are going to create the federal government. We're going to incite a war, allegedly. And after the war, on the merits of, man, this is for, for national security, we're going to have to make sure that the federal government get to this to define the state's limits to avoid other insurrections, so to speak. Okay, now that was the transformation, how it went from a de jure government to a de facto government, now a nation state, a corporation. All right, part 6. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1862 to 1863. A common claim versus reality. And I'm going to give you the reality, not the claim, what people think. All right, documentation beats conversation. It's not about emotions. It's what you could prove. And I'm giving the documentation. Many people say Lincoln freed the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. That statement is not fully accurate. Let me tell you why. The proclamation was a wartime order that declared freedom for enslaved people in areas, only in areas where the rebellion against the Union was. It was the only place that happened. It did not immediately free every enslaved person everywhere in the United States. So that statement is incorrect. All right. So we're just putting that in perspective. B, September 22nd, 1862, preliminary Emancipation Proclamation issued. January 1st, 1863, Emancipation Proclamation took effect. C, what did it do in layman terms? In layman terms, this is what the proclamation accomplished. It declared freedom for enslaved people in the Confederate held territories, areas in rebellion. Only, period, point blank. The Confederate States or territories, okay, where they had the rebellions. It changed the purpose of the war politically and morally by making slavery a central issue. It encouraged enslaved people to flee the Union lines and weakened the Confederate labor system. All that was part of it was part of the plan. It was by design. How can we weaken these individual states? Well, let us plan something. And if y'all don't know who was behind that, I'll give you a clue. The same people who own the basketball teams, the same people who own the football teams, the same people who own the hockey teams, the same people who own the baseball teams, the same people that own Hollywood, the same people, the same people, the same people. Allegedly. Okay? All right, let's rock. What did it do? It allowed and accelerated the recruitment of black soldiers into the Union Army. You feel me? Well, we have them as enslaved people, but we're going to use them to fight our war. Our people have always been the pawns in the game, and a lot of them don't even realize that they are pawns in the game. You feel me? That's the sad part about it. But let us proceed. What it did not do. So I explained to you what it did from a layman perspective. I'm going to tell you what it did not do from a layman perspective. It did not instantly free enslaved people in loyal border states. It didn't do that. Only in the rebellious states. Only. It did not by itself abolish slavery nationwide or permanently, right? That required a constitutional amendment. Let us proceed. E, as in letter E. How it helped make way for the 13th Amendment. You see, everything happens in concession. Everything happens in steps. You feel me? Like I said, these people are always 50 moves ahead. They have an exact playbook. It's like a prophecy that they put in place, and they have to make sure that everything falls in line with the prophecy. Wink, wink, Bible. Hint, hint, Bible. You dig? So they know exactly what move to make. It's like two basketball teams playing, and one of the coaches on the other team, he playing both sides, and he's telling the other team exactly their play. So the one that knows the play, they make every move that you make. They 2 steps ahead. They 3 steps ahead. You dig? And you're trying to figure out, damn, what's going on? It's the same thing, man. The plays that they're making is the plays that they already put in place. They are just pushing everybody in the direction of where they want them to go and how they want them to think. And that's easily done because people don't think outside the box. They are boxed in. Let's read. The Emancipation Proclamation shifted the national policy and public expectation toward abolition and made it harder to return to the pre-war system. You see that? To the pre-war system, because they didn't want people to go back to being sovereign people, independent people. So they took up the plight of the enslaved people, right, and used that as an excuse to put all of that in play. Allegedly, it created momentum and political conditions that supported pushing a permanent constitutional end to slavery through the 13th Amendment. But did the 13th Amendment really end slavery? We are going to break that down and more. You feel me? Let us rock. Part seven. Number seven, part three. The 13th Amendment and the crime exception. Pay attention. Letter A. The key idea is this: the 13th Amendment is the constitutional measure that abolished slavery and involuntary servitude broadly, okay, throughout the entire Union. However, it includes an exception that allows involuntary servitude and slavery as a punishment for a crime after conviction. So what they were doing was they used our people as pawns to create the de facto union. And after they did that, they was like, you know what, man? We cannot blatantly put them back into slavery. So how can we find a loophole? Ah, I got it. The 13th Amendment. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to tell them, at least let them think, that slavery or involuntary servitude could never happen in the United States. So now they're gonna fight for that. They're gonna support that. Nobody's gonna veto that. No, they're gonna support it because we are being free. Finally, we could be part of, we could be part of the Joneses, the corporation. You feel me? But they put a provision in there. A provision. And that's why a lot of people don't read with understanding. They made you free, yes, but on one condition. And that condition is, it's an exception that says we could enslave you again and make sure that we could force you into involuntary servitude if you are convicted of a crime as a form of punishment. So they found a way to legalize slavery. Why do you think jail is a business? And I keep asking my people, why do you want to be a customer? But let us read. Reading is fun for the mental. Let us go to letter B. The exception in plain language and in plain sight. But some have eyes, but they can't see. So I'm about to open up your eye right now. And I did say eye as in singular, as your first eye, and not your two physical eyes. Because your first eye is not your third eye, it's your first eye. All right? Let us read. In plain terms, the exception says, if someone is duly convicted of a crime, forced labor or slavery can be legally imposed as part of the punishment. This is why people say the 13th Amendment ended slavery but left a loophole, because it did. It did, people. Mm, mm, mm. Wow. Let us read. Let us see. Why the language was international. No shortcuts and no shortcuts explanation. The wording was not accidental. I promise you that. It wasn't coincidental. It wasn't accidental. It was intentional. The amendment was written to eliminate chattel slavery in general. Okay, in theory, that's what they wanted people to think. All they did was transfer slavery. That's all they did. But the lawmakers also kept room for criminal punishment systems that had long included forced labor and slavery. That meant the new constitutional rule would abolish slavery for the general population while preserving the authority to compel labor from incarcerated people. Guess what? Jails got owners as well. The same people that own the corporation. Okay? Allegedly. Let's go into number 8, part 4. After the Civil War, the Black Codes was introduced. Okay? Convictions, forced labor. Eh, um, Number 8, letter A. What were the Black Codes in layman terms? After the Civil War, many southern states passed what was called the Black Codes. All right? Laws designed to control and restrict the freedom of newly freed Black people. Newly freed Black people. Okay? It did not apply to newly freed so called white people, only Black people. Because they'll give you the illusion that these Caucasians, people you call white, they're not white. People that you call white, they were not slaves. Yes, they were. You feel me? And this is not an alleged statement. That's a fact. They were slaves. However, the Black codes did not apply to them. It only applied to the brown-skinned people that call themselves Black. So therefore, even today, those codes still apply. And it doesn't matter how I make an attempt to teach my people, they want to make me the enemy for teaching them the damn truth. Ain't that a you know what? Let us read. Reading is fun for the mental. These laws often made ordinary life activities. Pay attention. These Black codes, they didn't say statutes. They didn't say ordinances. No, they say these laws. They were laws, people, laws of the land. So these Black codes, it made ordinary life activities into criminal offenses. Ordinary life. Basic, everyday living. They criminalized those activities, such as unemployment was a crime. That's why they made sure that our people could not get jobs. So you could be arrested and that was a crime. My people, do you see what I'm talking about? Huh? Man, I get so frustrated sometimes, man. Like even today, I went to get some vegetables and I felt so overwhelmed and just frustrated. And I'm asking my ancestors, yo, why me, man? Why me? Why you got me doing this out here and these people are so stiff-necked? Why you got me working overtime? I'm frustrated. You feel me? You gave me the tools to restore my people. And I've been saying that since 2014. And they're not walking with me. And the ancestors came to me and said, Chief, you know what? Take your sleepers off and just go walk on the grass for a second. Go walk on the grass. Go ground yourself. I get your frustration. Just go ground yourself for a minute. So I just calm myself down. Took off my shoes. Well, I had slippers on. And then I grounded myself for a minute. And I was able to calm down. But this could be so frustrating, man. It could be so frustrating that one of the only men on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook that's giving you the truth the way I'm giving it to you. And a lot of you still want to make me the enemy. I just don't get it, man. I don't get it. Who else do you hear breaking it down like that? And telling you that the solution is in place. I'm trying to figure out, man, what am I doing wrong, man? I don't know. Somebody explain it to me, man. What am I doing wrong? But anyway, you call yourself Black today, the Black codes apply to you. That's why when the police pull you over on the radio, description Black, 6'1", 5'3", 5'4", 6'8", whatever the case is, they have to put Black. Therefore, the Black codes kick in automatically. So once again, everyday living became criminalized, such as unemployment. You got a criminal record. Loitering, if you're on the corner chilling, it doesn't matter what you're doing. criminal activity. Do you see some of the things that our people are in jail for, doing years and years of sentences because of that? Hmm? Breaking curfews. Breaking curfews. Why do you think they had to make sure that a war broke out first? What do y'all think is getting ready to happen again, people? Because my people are stiff-necked people. My people refuse to learn from the past. So it's going to repeat itself. The same thing that happened in 1861 is happening right now. But it's disguised as something else. So unemployment, that was a crime. Loitering, that was a crime. Breaking the curfew, that was a crime. Or not having proof of employment. So even if you said you had a job, you have to prove it, or else you were getting arrested. Let me just come to the chat real quick. Let me see how everybody's doing. All right, I'll get back to the join in a second. Hey, what's going on, Lineage? What's going on? What's going on? I know it says it's only about 18 people on here right now, but you know what it is, what it is. All right. Hey, Thomas, what's going on? We'll see you what the deal is. KS, what the deal is. What the deal is. Greetings, welcome to the build. And Medea, what's going on? What's going on? All right. Let's get back to the document. All right. Let me see right here. I don't want to remove the document. I want to get back to the document. Let's go. All right. Next, we have B. How that connects to the 13th Amendment exception. Here's the chain in plain terms. Number one, make everyday behavior a crime. Number two, arrest people for minor or fabricated offenses. You feel me? That's what the 13th Amendment allowed these people to do. Even if it was fabricated, we're going to plant evidence. We're going to make sure that we get your ass back into jail so you could go back into slavery. That's why you hear so many stories of brothers and sisters in jail, all right, who's been in jail for 20, 30 years. All of a sudden, they're coming out after 20, 30 years because for something they didn't do, because they were framed. It was fabricated. Guess what? That's about to come back in play. What? Mark my words, that everything I'm telling you is going to come into fruition. Just pay attention, because we refuse to come together and do what needs to be done. Let us read. It's fun for the mental. Convict them in courts that offered little protection. Convict them in courts that offered little protection. Do you really think, as the people, we could go into these foreign courts and they're going to give us justice? Those are the same people that the people who call themselves black are looking to get reparations from. Somebody let it make sense. Next, number 4, use the 13th Amendment exception to force them into labor as punishment. This is how forced labor slavery could expand again, legally though, this time, through criminal convictions. Let's go into C, convict leasing. Let me break that down to you what it means. Convict leasing was a system where states rented incarcerated people to private businesses. They had mines and railroads and plantations and factories to work. So when you do your damn genealogy and you see one of your ancestors was a slave on a plantation, my people, it did not mean that they came from Africa. It meant that they committed a crime or they got framed for a crime and they got put on the damn plantation, man. How many different ways can I break this down to you? That's where the frustration comes in. I'm not mad at you. I'm just frustrated. So, and once again, I'm not shouting, man. I'm just passionate, man. And that's part of the frustration. I'm not lashing out at you. I'm not doing none of that. But sometimes, you can't help it. Even if you're teaching at the same time, I got to vent. Because that's my therapy, man. Let me tell you something. If I wasn't a strong individual mentally, I would have gone crazy already. I would need therapy, but this is my therapy, so allow me to vent. But at the same time, I'm teaching. So let me accomplish both of them. All right. So don't mind me raising my voice and don't mind the aggression. That's me venting. I need it, or else I'm gonna go crazy. I'm telling y'all. So I have to do it. Okay. All right. Cool. Just want to make sure I laid that on the table. So this is what was happening. Okay. Our people was being leased, like how you lease a truck, you lease a car, you lease some equipment. They were being leased to businesses, to work in mines, or no, well, not work, but slave in mines, slave on railroads, slave on plantations, slave on factories and in factories to work. Businesses paid the state. They didn't pay them, they paid the state. They paid whom? The slave owner. Who are the slave owners? They own the basketball team. What do you think basketball players? That's just another form of slavery. They're working on the plantation. They're getting paid. They're just making more money. But I ain't mad at them. So I don't want it to come off as hate. I respect what they're doing. But it's the same situation. Ain't nothing changed. Just a different arena, a different venue. Same concept. If you think someone who plays sport could get a contract for, let's just say, $5 million a year, how much money do you think the owner is making a year on that individual? Think about what I just said. If a player of any sport gets $5 million a year, or 2.5 million, let's just say $2.5 million a year, right? For a contract. How much do you think the owners is making on that individual per year? Just that's a rhetorical question, but I'm going to have you think about it. Okay? Let's continue. Check it out. The incarcerated workers often face brutal conditions, extreme violence, because they would beat them. And if they wouldn't beat them, they would put them amongst other people that's not their peers, or they got beef with, to keep them in check. Pay attention. So conditions of extreme violence, brutal conditions, poor food, dangerous, dangerous work, high death rates, because the workers were leased, right? Private companies had little incentive to protect their lives. If someone died, another person could be leased. That's why they had to keep the flow going. So we're gonna make sure we create a system from high school, prison pipeline, from junior high school, kindergarten. We're gonna program you to take you straight to jail. Why do you think schools, the schoolroom, the classroom, the setup, it looked like the jailhouses? Go look at the desk, same. The windows, same. The yard, same. Fence with a basketball court. My people, what more? What more do you want from me? Hmm? Let us read. Let's go to letter D. Penal servitude. The breakdown. Penal servitude simply means forced labor slavery. All right. As punishment within the criminal system, convict leasing is one form of penal servitude. But penal servitude can also include chain gangs. Like I told you before, chain gangs. That's why they have to keep pushing the gang narrative. Do you think our children just literally one day got up and say, we're going to be gang members? No, my people. It was instituted in our communities. We had communities, they took that away and they turned it into neighborhoods. They turned it into ghettos. First, they turned it into projects. Let's turn it into an experiment. After they realized it would be successful, then they turned it into a neighborhood. And then the neighborhood became the projects. But we're going to make sure we institute the gangs. So through gang activities, prison farms, and work assignments inside prisons. Letter E. Why scholars use the term neo slavery. Some scholars use neo slavery to describe how slavery like conditions returned through the legal system after the abolition of slavery. The idea is not that the old system stayed exactly the same, but that forced labor, slavery, control, and exploitation and continued through a new pathway, criminalization and punishment. All right. Number 9, part 5, modern prison labor. Same principle, new form. 9, letter A. What prison labor looks like today in plain terms. Today, many incarcerated people work while serving sentences. The work can include kitchen duty, cleaning, laundry, maintenance, manufacturing, call centers, or public works programs, right? In many settings, refusal to work can lead to disciplinary conditions or consequences from such loss of privileges. Letter B. Why it connects back to the 13th Amendment exception. The connection is simple. The constitutional rules bans involuntary servitude or slavery in general, but permits slavery as a form of punishment after conviction. Courts have generally treated prison work programs as permitted under that exemption. All right. Let us see what people debate today. Key discussion points: whether wages and workers or working conditions are fair or exploitative, whether consent is meaningful in a prison environment, whether prison labor benefits rehabilitation or primarily benefits the institution and the contractors. I think it's the latter because it's for profit. Okay. Remember back in the days, they would tell you that prison was meant for correction. It used to be called correctional facilities. And all of a sudden they stopped calling it that because it had to become the new slave trade. Okay. Next, whether the exception, the clause, should be amended or removed. In closing, all right, let's go back to Abraham Lincoln emergency actions in 1861. It led to all of this. Because why? The corporation owners, they were the ones who put all of that in place. These people are brilliant. They are geniuses. Lincoln's Emergency Act actions in 1861 show how crisis can expand executive power and push Congress into reacting to events already in motion. The Emancipation Proclamation is often remembered as freeing all enslaved people, but it was a wartime measure focused on territories in rebellion. Like I said before, it was strategically done. It did not abolish slavery everywhere permanently. The permanent constitutional end to slavery came with the 13th Amendment, but the amendment included a deliberate, hear what I'm saying, a deliberate, it was put in there intentionally, exception allowing involuntary servitude or slavery as punishment after conviction. After the Civil War, black codes and aggressive criminalization helped create a pipeline from minor or fabricated offenses to convictions and forced labor. Convict leasing and penal servitude functioned in ways that many described as slavery by another name. In modern times, prison labor continue in various forms, and society debates whether it is rehabilitation, exploitation, or both, especially in the light of the 13th Amendment exception clause. My people, black people cannot change this because the codes apply to them. They have no power to change that because they are still under slave status. This is why I'm here teaching y'all for so many years. But people want to fight me and make me the enemy for teaching them the truth. And I'm not saying everybody. And you still have influential people on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok still calling y'all black, and y'all don't see a problem with that because they make you feel good. I'm not here to make you feel good. I want to make you feel uncomfortable because I will never call my people black because I know what it means. And anybody who insists on calling you black and they say they know better, I think they are doing that intentionally. I think there's some form of it. There's a little bit of an agenda. Period. Because if you know what it means, why would you call other people black? Let us rock. Let us proceed. We're going to talk about the 14th Amendment. All right. Well, before we do this, I want to take a quick pause real quick. I'm going to come back and share my screen. I want to come back and pause. Osio, Zara, what's going on? What's going on, Z? What the deal is? What the deal is? All right. Somebody asked. Who asked that? Gangster Slim ass, how to destroy the straw man without all the BS everyone doing. All right. If it's done properly and with what? Hold on, let me just highlight that. All right. And with proof, people will get on board. Too many be messed up, yeah, and blind. Yeah, to be quite frank with you, lineage, let me just keep it real. I don't really get involved too much with the whole straw man thing because it is still part of the corporation. That's why I focus on us being indigenous, because that's our only way out. That's our only way out, is to stand as who we are. You feel me? Because even if you deal with the straw man, and there's nothing wrong with that, you could deal with that, but it still leaves you within the jurisdiction of the corporation. And I'm not saying that doing it as an indigenous man or woman, aka American Indian, it doesn't mean that. But the only difference is it takes you also, to what's called make international laws and international treaties. It makes it applicable when you are not domesticated. You see, even if you do certain things with the straw man, right? It is still domestic. But when you are indigenous American Indian, all right, you start building on the premise of who we truly are, then it now becomes international and not domestic. It's not going to happen overnight. So when people have all these different, what you call when they have all these different stories and all these different joints, I tell them, let me explain something to y'all. All right. The truth of the matter is this. It's just too many behind the scenes, like you said, behind the scenes packages. Everybody got a package. Everybody got a process. Everybody want to charge you an arm and a leg for something that you still don't have control over. You did? And that's why I tell people I focus on us being who we truly are, because there's no overnight solution. This is a process. It took the United States how long before they got recognized as a nation? The United States has only been a nation for a little over 200 years. But we have been fighting these people since 1494 to 1923. You see how many years we've been fighting, and we're still fighting. The problem is too many people, they are looking for overnight solutions. And I'm just here to keep it real with y'all, man. There's no overnight solution. This is a process that we just have to make up our mind and come together and stand on us being who we are as the original people. And that's the only solution that's going to give us our sovereignty. The only, period. Nothing else. That's it. And that's why I just focus on that. You dig? And of course, you could put certain provisions in place, you know what I'm saying, dealing with the straw man. Yeah, you could do that. Allegedly. You could do all of that, right? But the main focus is this. We as original indigenous people, that is where the ultimate solution is. And that's why I'm focused on that. And that's why I keep telling our people, I know how to restore our people, but I can't do it alone, man. I can't do it alone. And I'm going to keep saying that. So if we choose to deal with this situation by just ignoring it, it's not going to go away. All right. If we choose to deal with the situation by all these different packages that people have and status corrections that people have, it's not going to go away. The only solution is to be who we are. You see what I'm saying? Get it from out of the domestic jurisdiction and let it become international. How do we do that? We do that in numbers. That's how we get that done. We get it done in numbers. So I hope that answers your question. All right. All right. Z says, I have a cousin in prison. I want to help him get out. All right, Z. Reach out to me and we'll see what we could do. You know what I'm saying? I'll find out exactly what the situation is, and we'll see if we could do anything. All right. Hit me up. I got you. You says, yes, it's not going to happen. Yeah, because a lot of people always think, man, everything is going to happen overnight. You know, well, Chief, y'all got the Republic. All right, cool. I'll be a part of the Republic. And does that mean that I don't have to pay bills? Does that mean that I don't have to pay my rent? Does that mean I don't have to pay taxes? Does that, come on, people. Y'all, people keep forgetting. I'm not sure if they're forgetting or they just don't know that we are prisoners of war in our own land. So do you think these people are just going to be like, okay, yeah, you know who you are. You're the American Indian. All right, cool. Here, take everything back. Y'all really think that's what's going to happen, huh? Man, listen, this may even have to come to a point where it becomes physical. I'm just saying, I hope it don't. These people ain't playing games. We're the only ones out here playing games, fighting each other and staying divided. But they're not playing games. So there's no quick solution. And that's why I don't come on here and sell illusions to people. I don't want to do that. Because that's disingenuous. You feel me? Coming together is just, and working together as a collective, that is the beginning and the foundation. Now, let's go to work. Freedom ain't free, people. That's why they say if you think it's free, then you're dumb. That's why it's called freedom. I don't want no freedom, because freedom is contingent, and it's really determines on the captive to decide what your freedom is. I don't want justice, because it's up to the controlling power to decide what justice is. I don't want equality, because you decide what that is. No. I want our sovereignty back. Period. And that's just where I'm at with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So my thing is, I am pushing for decolonization, because we are colonized in our land as we speak. These people are colonizers. So therefore, I stand on the principles and the premise of decolonization. And that's something that we could come together and bring into an international platform. That's what I'm talking about. Looking for domestic solutions, I'm telling y'all, good luck with that. All right, let's get back to sharing my screen and get back to the lesson. Well, all this is part of the lesson, but what I was actually reading. All right, let me go back to the window, and boom, let's share this. Don't you give up on me. No, 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 no. People, I'm not going to give up on y'all, man. But y'all got to know by now that your brother is the real deal. Y'all got to know that by now. Y'all should know that by now. I'm just saying, like, man, I don't have to convince nobody that I'm the real deal. Because just go look at my track record, minus all the propaganda and people trying to, what you call, what do you call that? Defamation of character. But guess what? I've always been here standing, showing my face. They try to take me, my own people, with their lies and propaganda. Guess what? They still couldn't take me down. Where they at today? You can't find them because they was dealt with. You dig? But we got work to do, man. We got work to do. Let's rock. The 14th Amendment. I'm going to explain that and break that down to y'all. All right. So we're going to talk about the 14th Amendment, citizenship, the birthright, and subject to the jurisdiction, what it all means, because that's what's in the 14th Amendment. That's the language. All right. A clear, layman friendly breakdown of meaning, the scope, and the legal effect. So that's what I'm going to break down to y'all right now. Number one, this is the purpose of the lesson. When I'm done with this part of the lesson, then you should have a better understanding of the aforementioned. Okay? The purpose of this lesson. This document explains the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution with a focus on its citizenship clause. It separates historical motivation from the legal operation and explains in plain language what the phrases born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof actually mean. So I'm going to put that in context for y'all. All right. Number two, why the 14th Amendment was created, historical context. The 14th Amendment was adopted in 1868 during the Reconstruction era. Why do you think it was called Reconstruction? Let me ask you a question. If you already had a construction, why would you need a reconstruction? What are you changing? What are you replacing? What are you covering? You feel me? It was a continuous build on the people that were called American Indians, indigenous people, changing their identity to now enslaved people. Yeah, do y'all see what's going on now? Our people did not come from Africa. No. And people they had coming in was coming from different parts of the Americas. Africa meant enslavable. Black meant, this is the breakdown. Okay? Negro. Negro meant enslavable. So we went from American Indian to Negro. It had to happen with Negro first because that's what the Portuguese called our people. Negro de terra. So they did not automatically take away their status. They still told them you are the people of the land. But now you're not just the Indians of the land. You are now called the Negroes of the land. You see how the paper genocide started? Started in the Caribbean. That was the testing ground. That was the project, so to speak. You did. So from Indian to Negro de terra, still letting them know, hey, we're not taking away, your land. We're not taking away who you are. You are still indigenous to the land. That's why we are telling you, you are the Negro of the land. But boom, all of a sudden, that changed to just Negro. And then that changed to now being black, not even African, to now being black. And therefore, black denotes African. You see the transition? It has always been paper genocide. Our people became African on paper, not geographically, and not through a slave ship. Yes, through citizenship, but not a slave ship, allegedly. Okay? All right, cool. So once again, let's read that again. The 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was adopted in 1868 during the Reconstruction period. I mean, those are some very interesting words, isn't it? Reconstruction. I wonder what was the construction there before. Interesting. Its primary purpose was to resolve the legal status of formerly enslaved people after the abolition of slavery by the 13th Amendment and to overturn the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision, which denied citizenship to people of African descent. Okay? All right, let's rock. To be clear, The 14th Amendment was instituted primarily to resolve the legal status of formerly enslaved people following the abolition of slavery. Okay, let's read that again. The 14th Amendment was primarily to resolve the legal status of formerly enslaved people following the abolition of slavery. Why am I reiterating that? As you could see, it's a reconstruction. It's literally a status change, a transformation of status right on paper. But like I said, the blind will not see it. Because guess what? Caucasians were slaves. In fact, the 12.5 million slaves that came was them. How come it didn't apply to them at first? How come it didn't apply to them at first? Explain that to me. Why they had to make it be about the so-called black people? Because those were the indigenous people of the land. So they had to use them to pass that into law to make sure that the 12.5 million Slavs became citizens of the country. I gotta laugh. It's too easy. Let's rock. Okay? Let us rock. In the historical and legal context of the United States, the enslaved overwhelming referred to of African descent, right? African descent, meaning that descended from Africa, who had been held in chattel slavery. Thus, the primary group Congress sought to protect were formerly enslaved Africans and their descendants, even though the amendment was written in universal language and ultimately applied beyond the original group. Because if it was for our people originally and it was intended for our people, then they would have not brought in the 13th Amendment and make slavery legal through crime and then criminalize, and it was our people that was more susceptible to these crimes. So it was never about our people. Just like the civil rights was never about our people. You know why? Well, Chief, can you prove it? Show me where today we have benefited from the civil rights. It was never about our people. It has always been about the Europeans, and not just the pale ones, but the so-called black ones. And I've always said that. Allegedly. Let us rock. Let us go into number 3, the citizenship clause, the exact language in the 14th Amendment. What does it say? All persons born or naturalized, so you could be born or naturalized in the United States. Pay attention now. It never said the United States of America. It said in the United States. Like I tell people, man, you got to read with understanding. That's why I tell people I do this for real. I do this for real. You feel me? Hey, what up? What up? What up? Hold on for a second. Let me just come back to the chat real quick. Let me just see who we got here. Give me a second. All right, boom. All right, boom. We already shown that. All right. Hey, Kev, what's going on? What's going on? You said what's going on? Yeah, it's not it's not gonna happen overnight because our people is in love with the dollar. Yeah, absolutely. They're in love with the fiat currency. All right, we're going to need the sun's help, the knockout grids, and absolutely. All right, we're gonna have to call to a higher power. You feel me? To make this thing happen. You dig? But even in the word itself, in the allegorical book, it says God only help those who help themselves. So it doesn't matter what the sun does. This ain't got nothing to do with complexion of people, because I keep telling people, you see, our people have a habit of saying they're the gods. Well, we are the gods. Well, let me ask you a question. Why are we always claiming gods, but we don't want to claim the devil? Because we all claiming gods, but a lot of us out here doing devilish shit. Does that mean you're a god that's evil, or you're just straight out the devil? So we have to learn to take accountability. If you're going to claim God, claim the devil, because God created the devil. So the devil ain't got nothing to do with the complexion of skin. When you look in the mirror, the devil look just like you. And that's facts over feelings. And that's not up for debate. You dig? Let's get back to the lesson. You feel me? So check it out. The 13th Amendment, this is what it's, pardon me, the 14th Amendment. This is the exact language. All persons, it didn't say people, it didn't say natural person, because a natural person is a living man or woman. It says all persons, that's left to interpretation, born or naturalized in the United States. How do you know they're talking to the fictitious entity? Because they never said the United States of America. They said the United States. And I'm going to prove it to y'all in a few minutes. The United States and the subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Once again, it's reiterated, of the United States, not the United States of America, and the state wherein they reside. And the state wherein they reside. Okay? So let me ask you a question. If the United States meant everything, why would they have to add and the state in where they reside? Wouldn't it just be the United States and let it mean everything? Why they have to add and? You see, and is a conjunction, and it's telling you that it's two different things. If I have an apple and an orange, you're not going to tell me the apple is the orange and the orange is the apple. They're both fruits, but they're different fruits. You feel me? So they told you the United States and the states you reside. Okay? All right, let's rock. Number 4, born or naturalized. What does that mean? This phrase identifies 2 ways a person may qualify for citizenship: by birth within the U.S. territory or lawful naturalization. However, this condition alone is not sufficient without meeting the jurisdiction requirement, people. So just being born in the U.S. or being naturalized in the U.S. does not automatically make you a citizen. No. There is a jurisdiction clause. What is that? Let's go to number 5. It says you have to also be a subject. You see, that's the key word right there. You have to be a subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So what does that mean in layman terms? The legal terms, or in legal terms, being a subject to the jurisdiction means full political and legal subjugation, people, to the authority of the United States. Not the United States of America, but the United States. This includes what? Complete obedience to the U.S. civil and criminal law, owing enforceable allegiance to the United States, not the United States of America. No competing sovereign alliances or allegiance. Full liability to the U.S. courts. In other words, it doesn't matter what court we put you in the U.S., you are subject to any one of them, all the de facto ones as well. You dig? That's what they meant when they said, yeah, you could be born, you could be naturalized, but the only way to be a true citizen, you have to be subjected. And this is what subjected means. We own your ass. All right? You only have the privileges we give you. You don't have inherent rights. You have privileges we gave you. Number 6, historical exclusions. Historically, excluded groups include children of foreign diplomats, enemy occupying forces, and members of indigenous nations maintaining separate political, guess what, allegiances. Because we were, as indigenous people, American Indians, we were always separate, always. That's why they had to pull us in 1924. Wake up, my people. Because American Indians were always supposed to be treated as a distinct people with their own sovereignty. 7. Number 7, relationship to the 13th Amendment. How is it connected? The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, but did not define citizenship. You feel me? Well, you know, we are going to abolish slavery. You dig? The only way we could make sure it's legal or lawful is if you commit a crime and you're duly convicted, then we could now make you a slave or forced labor. But with that being said, you don't have citizenship. You feel me? Because at that time, those 12.5 million Slavs, which wasn't us, they were not citizens. You feel me? So they're always using our people to make sure that these things are put in place. I hope y'all see where I'm going with this. You see, do you see the transition? Do you see the blueprint? Do you see the plan? Do you see it from A to Z now? None of that had nothing to do with us. But they had to make sure that we were the ones to be the victims of everything that was put in place and use that to create the solution. But yet still the solution never benefited our people. Let it make sense. That was always about the Europeans, particularly the Caucasians. All right, let's rock. So let's check this again. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, but it did not what? It did not define citizenship. Because even if by default the slaves were so-called free and they used our people as guinea pigs, they were not calling the 12.5 slaves, they were not calling them slaves, they were calling them indentured servants. Those were the Slavs. They were the real slaves. They will not teach you that, though. Why do you think there's no such thing as White History Month? That's where the 12.5 come in. They want you to think it's Africans. No. And they changed the date and told you they came to Ellis Island in the 1900s. That's a damn lie, because that's when they introduced the Gregorian calendar and changed the damn dates. When I tell people this is so easy, man. This is so easy. It's not even funny. It's so easy. So therefore, this is what happened. The 14th Amendment, it filled the gap by creating a national rule for citizenship. You see that? A national rule for citizenship and limiting the state powers. You feel me? Let us read. Number 8, motivation versus legal scope. Motivation explains why a law was passed. The scope determines who it applies to. The 14th Amendment scope is universal, not race limited. Okay? They used our people as the guinea pigs to make sure that it came into play. But therefore, they're telling you it is not racial. It is not race limited. However, it's a scope of it's a universal scope, meaning that it's inclusive of everybody that's not considered the people we told you it was exclusively for. All right? Number 9, in plain, simple, layman English, here's the summary. The 14th Amendment defines U.S. citizenship. It requires born, birth, or naturalization in the U.S. and full subjugation to the U.S. jurisdiction, while born from the aftermath of slavery. It applies to all persons who meet the criteria. Let's go into birthright citizenship explained. Birthright citizenship flows from citizenship clause. Although motivated by slavery, like I said, motivated by slavery, because they had to use our people. Because even if they had the Slavs, they refused to call them slaves. They called them indentured servants. They called them pilgrims. They called them Quakers. They called it religious persecution. That's a damn lie. They were the slaves. The language was written broadly and has been applied universally by the courts. Birthright citizenship was initially instituted as a direct response to slavery and the legal exclusion of formerly enslaved people from citizenship. What sparked the movement was the need to guarantee that people who had been enslaved, you're telling me that you care about these people enough to make sure that you make them citizens, give them the 13th Amendment, but at the same time, you're being slick by putting in a clause that, don't worry, yeah, we got you, but we're going to trick you by making sure everything is a crime so we could now re-enslave you. While the real slaves, they out here living the American dream. Oh, we didn't tell you that, huh? My people, I hope you see what I'm showing you, man. It was part of a game. You did. So once again, all overwhelmingly, Africans and other descendants would be recognized as citizens by birth and could not be stripped of that status by states. In that original context, birthright citizenship was designed to secure citizenship for the same population the 14th Amendment primarily addressed: formerly enslaved people and their children. And what they did was, as long as they say that you are enslavable, then by default, you are black, and by default, it means that you are African, not by geography or bloodline. No, but by status. Although the rule was written in the universal terms and later applied broadly to others, its original impetus and catalyst were the condition and the treatment of formerly enslaved African descendants, people following the Civil War. All right. Now, the distinction between descendants of slaves and people, the distinction between descendants of enslaved people and indigenous people under U.S. and international law: citizenship, jurisdiction, sovereignty, and self-government explained. All right, because I have to show you the difference. Number one, this is the purpose of this part of the lesson. This document provides a clear legal and historical distinction between descendants of enslaved people incorporated into the United States through the 14th Amendment and indigenous people who pre-existed the United States as distinct political communities. Number two, descendants of enslaved people via the 14th Amendment population, descendants of enslaved people were incorporated into the United States through the Reconstruction Amendments. Why do you think it was called Reconstruction? If you're building something from scratch, wouldn't you just say, man, I got a construction job? That means you're going to build something. You're going to create something. Why would it be reconstruction? My people, man. Because these people were already in a place where the status that they had, it did not reflect what they wanted to institute. So they had to make sure they create a narrative. So they reconstructed a narrative. Particularly the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, which established national citizenship and placed them fully subject to the United States jurisdiction as individual citizens. Now, the political capabilities of people who call themselves black, meaning that you are a descendant of slaves from Africa, because that's what it means. If you call yourself black, it denotes that you are descendants of slaves from Africa. All right, pertaining to the 14th Amendment. So let's keep it in perspective, and the birthright citizenship. Okay, let's keep that in perspective. All right, because in today's world, not every so-called black individual, all right, outside of the status, is considered a descendant of a slave from Africa. So we're strictly talking about from the perspective of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the birthright citizenship. Okay, so there goes the political capabilities. From political organizations and movements within the U.S. law, they could do that. They could form political organizations, all right, and they could form movements within the U.S. law. They could advocate for recognition, reparations, or reform. They could create internal governance structures without sovereign authority. Okay, so they could do all of that. Legal limitations. Here goes their limitations. No recognition, independent sovereignty outside U.S. authority. So they cannot get international recognition because they are domesticated. They cannot do that. no treaty making or foreign diplomatic power. They have no capabilities of making no treaties with the US or have foreign diplomatic power. No international legal personality without recognition. So they are limited to only domestic activities because they are domesticated. All right? Let us go into indigenous, pre-existing nations. Indigenous people existed as distinct political communities, prior to the formation of the United States and entered relations through treaties, not through the 14th Amendment. Recognition rights, inherent rights of self-government, treaty-based political recognition, limited but acknowledged sovereignty. They are still limited though, but they have some form of sovereignty. Because why? They are still within the constructs, so to speak, of the jurisdiction of the United States. So I have to be fair on that. I cannot be biased. All right? Number 4, the core structural difference. Descendants of slaves, people were integrated as citizens within the U.S. or the United States, while indigenous people retain recognized political identity and limited sovereignty due to their pre-existing nationhood. All right? So I hope that made sense. I want to share something with you real quick, and let me go pull it up right here. Give me a second. Let me go pull that up and pay attention to this. Let's go to a code, a U.S. code. U.S. code, Title 5, U.S. code 3331. All right? Let me pull that up for y'all. Let me just pull that up for y'all real quick. Give me a second. Give me a second. Share the screen. And let us go into Title 5. Title 5 U.S. Code, Section 3331. Oath of office. Oath of office. Let's read. Okay? Right here. Oath of office. An individual except the president. Stop. So therefore, any individual except the president. This does not apply to the president, all right? But for everybody else. So therefore, any individual except the president elected or appointed to an office of honor or profit in civil service or uniformed services shall take the following oath. This is the oath. IAB, whoever your name is, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies. I'm going to stop right there. Can anybody tell me in the chat right now, in the comments, what is wrong with that picture? What stands out in that picture? The main thing that stands out in this picture. I'm going to read it again. The oath is this. IAB. All right? I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Can anybody tell me what they notice that is consistent with the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, right? The 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship. Can anybody tell me what's consistent? Huh? Man, listen, let me just block your ass with this Caribbean stuff. Man, listen, y'all slaves from Africa, y'all better go back to Africa. Okay? Yeah, of course, I love my accent. Let me go ahead and block your ass, man, because you see, y'all people, it doesn't matter what anybody teach y'all, y'all will always come with the stupidness. You know what I'm saying? Guess what? This is my indigenous land. You need to go back to Africa. You dig? All right? You're not an American Indian. You feel me? So you're about to get blocked. All right? You see, that's the ignorance that I talk about. You see what I'm saying? And that's why those people, they will continue to suffer. You're calling yourself an Indian, but you want to call somebody from the Caribbean a tether. Let it make sense. Let it make sense. When the truth of the matter is, I was called American Indian before you. I was called an American before you. I fought the colonizers before you. Let it make sense. Hmm? Yeah, I'm about to block you though. Yep. Now somebody says it doesn't include America. You're absolutely correct. All right. As you could see, it does not include the United States of America. So they're only talking about the corporation. You did. So everything that's happening right now is because of people. You are subjugated to a corporation, and that's the problem that's taking place right now. You feel me? But you see, people such as those that just come in my comment, I'm gonna leave them in the hands of the ancestors. Just watch. Let them do what they got to do. You did. That's why doing this right here, I tell people sometimes you just want to give up and leave it alone. You feel me? And just leave it alone. And or someone who identify, he say he's an American Indian. You know what I'm saying? But you're telling me that's not who I am because I'm from the Caribbean. Hmm. Okay. Let it make sense. But you're using the word Caribbean, Carib Indian. But you're telling me I'm not American Indian. Okay. Because you think the United States is America. The ignorance of some people. But anyway, man, I'm about to conclude this build. I think I had enough. I'm done with that. The message is for only those that's looking for truth, those that are willing to step into the truth. I ain't got no time for the rest, man. Because I already told people I already know exactly what's happening. You feel me? I already know what's happening. The truth of the matter is, y'all really, really, really think that the United States is America. You feel me? They really think that the United States is America, and that's the problem. But like I said, the corporation got something for y'all. Yep, they got something for y'all, and I cannot wait for it to manifest. And when I say that, I'm not talking about wishing nobody evil. I'm just saying that because you're so hard-headed, I can't wait for everything I've been talking about to come into fruition. You dig? Because I've been giving solutions from day one. I've been giving solutions from day one. I've been teaching this from day one. I've been showing the documentation from day one. I've been giving the facts. And those are the same people that never have solutions. You see what I'm saying? They never have solutions, but they always want to come criticize. You did. But it's all good though. All right. Hey Kev, trust me, Kev. I ain't even worried about them. My ancestor sent me here for a reason to do some work. So I'm getting it done. All right. So with that being said, man, I want to thank y'all for being a part of the build. I'm a chill, and it's always an honor coming forth and bringing the information. And like I tell people, do what you have to do with the information. You feel me? I'm just letting you know what it is, and I'm giving you the solutions. Not just talking about it. I'm giving you solutions. You could never say you didn't know, because you know. All right, because you've been told. So watch what's happening in the U.S. right now. Okay. And what people don't realize is this. Like I said before, there's only one America. But all these people they're colonized. They're colonized. That's why I tell folks, I don't care what you call yourself. You could call yourself American Indian. Because you call yourself American Indian, that don't mean you're my brother or my sister. I deal with people's energy. That's what I deal with. And that's the typical example of what I'm talking about. You did? So I always stand on what I'm going to stand on because I stand on truth and I stand on facts. All right? Watch it unfold. The Jubilee ending on January 6th. Just watch some things that's going to happen in the United States. Just watch. Right now, what is he trying to get? Greenland. Trump is trying to get Greenland right now by doing what? Paying the people of Greenland $1,000 a piece. No, $100,000 a piece. Hmm? The man would rather pay the people of Greenland $100,000 a piece instead of paying you. What does that say? Hmm? Okay. All right. But y'all think I don't know what I'm talking about, huh? Okay. I hear that. I hear that. Let me see if I could pull that up. Hold on for a second. Hmm. These people ain't playing games, man. They're not playing games. They are not playing games. I don't know where I got it somewhere. Let me see if I could pull that up real quick. Hold on for a second. Let me go to Google real quick and pull that up. Pull that up. Give me a second. Trump is proposing to pay $100,000 to the citizens of Greenland. I I think it was Greenland. Let me see. Age they discussed is it Greenland? I think it's Greenland. Which one is that? Yep, here we go. It's in yep, here we go. Breaking news. So I don't make these things up. I don't make these things up, man. I don't make it up. Check it out. Here we go. Let me go ahead and share that for you right now. Give me a second. What's going on, man? What's going on? Hold on for a second. Hold on. All right, that's not gonna work. Because let me see some ads coming up. Hold on. All right. Knock that out. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Let me see if I can share my screen. Give me a second. Oh, the United States is wrong. It's been wrong. Why you think when you look at the Mastercard, what do you see? Don't you see a Roman helmet? And why do you think when people go to school they give them master's degree? Hmm? Go look on the Mastercard. It has the Roman helmet. This is wrong. The US is wrong. All right, so let me go ahead right here and share this. Look, pay attention. Trump has a bonkers new plan to win over Greenland residents. Donald Trump continued to scheme up ways to acquire Danish territory. This is what he says. Okay, the White House is floating another scheme in its quest to annex Greenland outright liberty bribery. The U.S. officials are reportedly mulling over the possibility of paying Greenlanders up to 100,000 each in order to acquire the Arctic outposts, according to four insiders that spoke in Reuters on Thursday. The White House aides were involved in the discussion, which proposed individual payments between 10,000 to 100,000 per islander. Okay. Yep. So, like I said, people want to turn a blind eye. Let them turn a blind eye because they just don't know what's going on. So they really think that this corporation is gonna give you something and put you in a better position. Nah, no, those black codes still exist. They still exist. All right, because they were laws, and those laws were never taken out of the books. All right. So, with that being said, I conclude this build. Thank you for being a part of the build, man. I'm sending love and much, positive energy to each and every one of you, man. Thank you. And I guess I'll see you guys on the next live. All right. Peace and love.